Hey, Star Wars fans, Rule of the Galaxy fans, Joe in the pilot seat of chapter 282 of the Rule of Galaxy podcast. We are live on YouTube. Mr. Elon Musk makes a lot of money and he wants more from us, so we cannot go live on Twitter right now. So we're not doing that, but come check us out live on YouTube. And we're going to have a lot of fun. We got a special guest tonight, one of our favorite guests. And out of our top 10 overall most watched shows, I believe he's in 5 of them. So we'll go around the horn, but we're going to get to our special guest. Remember to like, subscribe, follow, tell a friend. You know what? If you listen to or watch anything to do with Rule of the Galaxy, go tell a friend. Just say, hey, go check these guys out. They're fun. They don't half the time talk about Star Wars. Last episode was all Deadpool and Wolverine, but we try to have fun here, and we're 282 chapters in. So we'll go around the horn, and before we get to our special guest, I'll start with my cousin Alfie. Alfie, besides your medical issues, how's everything going?
Oh, everything's just great. School just started, so we're crazy busy every day. Football, volleyball, gymnastics, back and forth all day. It's awesome.
Parenting is a full-time job.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad your son, I'm so excited to go see him play football this year. I got a chance to watch your daughter play basketball last year. Your other daughter, I've got to see her play baseball so far. So I'm just trying to run the gamut here and see him all play all these sports. So
yeah, don't say softball around her. She doesn't like that word.
Yeah, I know. It's got to be baseball. She's
got to be baseball.
I get you. All right. And I do hope you start feeling better. I know you're battling some things. So
yes, thank you.
We will keep sending good thoughts and prayers your ways to feel better. Hey, our good friend, it's been forever, I think, since we've been on a show together, Mr. Brent Dykman. School's back in, Brent. How are you?
Yeah, I got like the head flu cold gunk that goes around. I have my taste buds and smell and sense of smell, so I don't believe it's the vid which is flying around again. But yeah, other than that, I'm loving life and
monkeypox.
Could possibly be some of that. Yep. I also was in the throes of 78,000 people 2 weeks ago at the convention called Gen Con.
Oh, yes.
And so I could have picked up something there. Either way, like, I'm doing good. Other than that,
I hear people who go to big conventions like that all the time talk about coming back with the convention crud.
Yeah. So, I mean, it is real. There are people around me. They got it and sounded worse than I did. I might have picked up somebody's secondary. I feel like I'm a secondary attack from the convention crud because of the nerddom and the nerd locations that I hang out with. So either way.
Well, keep battling, my friend, and I hope you enjoy your new school season. Before we get to our special guest, 2 other comments. One, Brent and I will be doing trivia on the south side of Indianapolis coming up in September, October, November. We'll be hosting together. So send us a message at ruletheGalaxySW@gmail.com if you want to come be a part of trivia. We'll make an invite. We'll get you set up for it. It's a lot of fun. We do it. We have a good time. I play the music way too loud. Brent will agree. And then second, before we get to anything, because I want to spend a lot of time listening to Transformer Talk and everything else with Steve Glosson, I want to send a quick shout out to our friends Hyperspace Heroes. Last night was their 100th episode, and
nice.
They had Carson Trevis? Carson Daly? No, not Carson Daly, but the pilot from Mandalorian and Ahsoka and whatever else.
Oh, the guy from the Canadian from the. Okay, I know.
Get there.
Yeah, I can't think of the name of the show, but yeah, he's the comedian that does what was it, Kim's Convenience Store. That guy.
There we go. So, but shout out to them. Brown Leader, DB, Scruffy. Cool, happy for you guys. 100th episode. You know what? A lot of people. There goes that magic. Thumbs up again.
Because you were clicking your Bic there.
Yes, I guess. I don't know, but see if that works for you, Steve. But yeah, there we go. 100 episodes for them. Great job, guys. Can't wait to talk to you again soon. We're going to be on your show. You're going to be on our show very soon. So excited about that. But let's get to the point here. like I said, our top 10 episodes all time on Rule of the Galaxy, 5 of them have this guy on there. And there's a reason why, because he's just a good, fun conversation. Our friend, Steve Glosson from the Geek Out Loud podcast and geekoutpodcast.com. How you doing, Steve?
Can we hear that?
Yes.
I'm sorry. That was indulgent. I apologize. I didn't know that I didn't know if I could bring up sounds on my end or not. So that could add a whole new wrinkle to this thing.
I am loving this. You ready with the soundboard, Steve?
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for having me, guys. I'm really glad to be 5 of the top 10 listen to reviewed shows. Here's what I find interesting. You said this is chapter number 282.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I've been doing this. We talked about this off air, but I've been doing this now for 17 years, and of Geek Out Loud, I'm at 303 or 4. So, yeah.
Go ahead, Brent.
It's a different format, though, man. You're
Yes.
you're long form. You're producing radio spots and like gag commercials.
To be fair, those were all produced for me in all these past years with different things. I don't do any editing. I just kind of record and roll. But it is long form, and so about every 6 weeks I'll be like, I guess I should record something and put it out there for the people, and then I've got like 3 hours worth of pent up stuff to discuss and talk about, and we're still in the middle of our March Madness best movie score brackets ever. So
I love it. I love it. That's one thing. And whenever I text you, I always want to say, "Hey, March Madness, it'll finish by next March." Is that what we're looking at?
That's probably what we're looking at. Yeah, the Final Four will be in March of 2025 or 6.
Huh. Well, it was a big undertaking. I will tell you that. We've done it before where we've done a top 100, and it's been very simple, like favorite characters, favorite this. You going into the sound or it's the soundtracks, right?
It's scores. It's just movie scores. Yeah.
And he's also playing a lot. Like it's not just a snippet. He's playing a significant portion of a lot of these scores.
Yeah, I try to keep it to around 90 seconds of each track that I play, just because apparently that's fair use time. And since we're reviewing and talking about them, I guess. But that's another reason why none of my stuff is on YouTube, because the minute I put it up there, it's like, well, I'm going to sit there and stare at the camera for 90 seconds of silence or some weird YouTube, unlicensed or royalty-free music, that they'll stick in there.
Well, we've gotten in trouble with that. We've gotten in trouble with that a little bit, where we've gotten slapped on the wrist for going too long on some videos or music or what have you. So.
Well, I don't like when I first started kind of dipping my toe into the YouTube thing. What I was doing was I was using the Geek Out Loud audience as a test grounds to see if I knew how to use, broadcasting software for church purposes for my church, because it was back during the whole, stuff. But so that was around the time that the Bill and Ted 3 trailer came out.
Oh my God.
And so I had it up playing. It was literally on the screen as I was watching it. I had me and it in a little box on the screen, and I was commenting on it as it was going. And I got like a copyright violation because of that. And I'm like, let me say this to and I wanted to say this, and I actually put it in writing to whoever was, whatever computer program is monitoring these things. One of the dumbest things you can do, I think, as a movie studio, as a TV studio, is say, we don't want your free advertisement.
Right.
Yeah. Like, oh, you're going to talk about this trailer? You're going to talk about this new thing and you're going to show it? No, we don't want that. Forget you. Who's stealing content from a trailer? That's so, yeah, it's not like I was showing the movie and right. Like, comment. It was literally a trailer, and that really irked me. And so, I miss the Wild Wild West days. I miss the days when it was just a free for all out here, man, in this internet wasteland.
Well, it's not that anymore, as you know. Everything is looked at, watched. I actually, for work, was reaching out to some people in some industries related to mine across Facebook. And Facebook actually slapped me on the wrist and said, "You've reached out to too many people recently. We're going to put you on a suspension," because I was reaching out and asking them if they were interested in something we were doing. And they said, "Yeah, you can't do that." So,
You cannot use our platform to get in touch with people.
right.
You cannot use a social networking platform to socially network.
Yeah, it is what it is, I guess.
Crazy, man. Wow.
Well, as I usually do, I love, we can go, as Steve mentioned, the Wild Wild West on this show and just shoot from the hip. I know we were talking about that Transformer back behind you earlier. We can go into the minutia and talk about that because Alfie loves it. But I did write down notes of things that, since it's been so long since we've all been on together, because we took last week off. The week before that, it was just D-Doc and myself. So it's been almost a month since I've been with my two pals, Alfie and Brent. And with our special guest, we can talk about any topic, but I did lay out a few topics that I thought were, right on time, things that we should hit on. But I'm free. If there's a topic you guys want to hit before I get to the list, Alfie, Brent, or Steve, my ears are open. Whatever you want to talk about, or we can jump into some craziness.
I'm at your disposal. I don't know what Alfie wants. If Alfie wants to talk Omega Supreme, we'll talk Omega Supreme. You know how he used to be buddies with the Constructicons and everything, and they went into the Decepticon world, and he stayed stoic, but he's not going to interfere. And then I was like, "We need you, Omega Supreme," and and he's like, "Omega." If we want to do that, that's fine.
So
But,
since you brought up Omega Supreme, there is a movie that is coming out September, Transformer 1,
Yes.
which I don't know much about the Transformer world.
Don't know much
Right. But I know I love you.
about Transformers.
Wow, it's usually me singing.
So what do you know about it? Like, how does it fit within, like, the 1980s cartoon world? Like, how does it fit within the movie world?
No idea.
Don't have any idea.
I mean,
Okay.
it looks like it's basically the origin story of Optimus and Megatron.
Megatron, right? They were friends.
And
Ideas
and Alfie, were you a big G1 fan, Alfie?
Oh yeah, that was right at when I was
That's
a
your
little
jam.
kid. Yeah.
Do you remember the stuff?
Alfie,
like
you and Steve are the same age. You're born in the same year, so you
Okay.
guys are right on it. Yeah, timing.
So do you remember the stuff with like Alpha Trion and all that stuff, and the key to Vector Sigma and all that?
No, I don't remember all that stuff.
Right. See, that's later in the run, and so I don't know if this is going to just blow all that out of the water from the G1 cartoon, or what's going to happen. But it seems to me like this is more leaning on some of the stuff that like IDW put out early on with the comic series and everything. There was a whole back in the early 2000s, like the 20th anniversary kind of stuff that came out, IDW and Dreamwave, I guess was what it was called first. They had this whole Transformers comic that picked up where the old show left off. Kind of, it was a lot darker, but they also dove back into all the origins and stuff. And I think this leans more into some of that, where Megatron and Optimus were like besties, almost like a Lex Luthor Superboy kind of thing. And then, one decided, freedom is the right of all sentient beings, and the other decided, I'm the leader of the Decepticons, and then it's this never-ending battle till all are one. So,
I was never a Transformer guy. Never watched a movie. Never watched a cartoon. I'm the oldest of the group. I think I was a little past when it hit its prime.
that's what you did there.
Thank you. And so, but I did, bringing all this together, I believe, as we all bow down at the altar of Rebel Force Radio, we know they're the biggest, the best, all that kind of stuff. Listening to an episode, somebody brought up, hey, with all these topics going on, it'd be great to have Steve on again, because you used to go on there a lot, and they were like, "I'd love to hear his thoughts on this." And then when they did that, I believe, was it FJ DeSanto? Was he working on an animated?
Yeah, so he had a trilogy, I believe.
Yeah, there was and it was made for like
Netflix. I think.
Tech TV or IGTV or what, it's whatever G4 became. And it's where you get like the Power of the Primes and the Combiner Wars and that sort of thing kind of came out of that. And they were like little mini episodes that were only, I don't know where they're streaming now because that's a defunct company and everything, but I guess you can probably find them here on YouTube maybe, but, yeah, I watched some of that. I was really interested, and of course, FJ talked about the Transformers fandom just being brutal, and they are, like they're as brutal as the Star Wars fans, maybe a little even more so, because I think we all have these fond memories of those people that are my age have these fond memories of what that G1 series was and everything, and it was good, like. Look, I'll put up 80s cartoons against anything that came out after, 1990. Yeah. When the best thing to me, in my opinion, the best thing that kind of came out from the 90s forward was like the Batman animated series, Superman animated series, the Justice League, and I wish Justice League Unlimited was still running. I mean, that was a jam up good show. And there have been a few things here or there, cartoon wise, but as far as like just kids programming that just fired up the imagination, I don't know that it gets better than Transformers, G.I. Joe, He-Man, that block on a weekday afternoon. And then, but I also think that we have to be realistic in understanding that sometimes the quality wasn't all there, even with the toys that came out, of some of those things. And so I think when you start messing around with quote unquote canon, people get really upset. The thing about Transformers canon is though you had the TV show, but then you had the Marvel comic series. And the Marvel comics were a completely different. It was almost like the same way with G.I. Joe, just a completely different animal than what you watched on TV. And so I don't have a problem if people take a few more liberties. Then you've got the whole what went on in Japan after the closeout of the Transformers in America versus, what the American canon is. You've got the whole Robots in Disguise, Transformers Armada stuff that went on. So I think those guys did a pretty good job with what they had. But my problem is it's all just a little dark these days. It's all a little,
everything.
It's a little more grim than you want it to be. Even though Transformers was, let's be honest, Transformers the movie, man, that was the one that traumatized a lot of Gen X little boys. And listen, we had the Challenger explosion. We had Optimus Prime being killed before our very eyes. What did you expect us to grow up to be?
Before Alfie hops in on this with his Transformer talk, I think it's very funny that we run a Star Wars podcast and we focus on that, but I listen to Steve on his podcast when he comes on here. I have a hard time keeping track of characters, planets, movies, and shows in the Star Wars universe. And this guy always comes on and has like 8 different genres that he can name: the comics, the cartoons, and everything else. And it freaks me out because I'm like, was I paying attention to my youth at all? I don't know.
That stops about 1989 for me. So,
okay.
Spider-Man was in the original Transformer comic miniseries, and so for the longest time, that doesn't get reprinted because of all the rights to Spider-Man and everything.
You brought up, and like I said, occasionally will throw off my list. You brought up the Batman comic, the animated series from the 90s. I have it on DVD.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of my favorites. My son grew up on it. We could watch it all the time. I think it's on Amazon right now. But have any of you checked out the new Caped Crusader on Amazon? I watched the first 2 or 3 episodes. It's not at the quality, in my opinion, of that old series, but it's still pretty good animation. It's still pretty good stories. I don't know if I'll get hooked on it like the old one, but it's not that bad. So I was just checking to see if anybody has checked it out at all. No?
I have not. I'm stuck on the X-Men right now. After watching Deadpool and Wolverine, I've gone back and start with the first 20th Century Fox X-Men movie.
Really?
Nice. Oh, you're going movies. You're going, yeah. Okay.
Okay. All right.
The kickoff to nerd culture, I feel like, that was one of the first movies and that kind of kicked off the nerd culture. I heard more mainstream.
I heard somebody the other day say, while we give all the MCU credit, they do feel like the X-Men was the kickoff of this.
Yeah, you had, and hi guys, I'm just taking over the show again. I'm sorry. You did
Play your
have
theme.
you had Blade in the
Yeah,
late
I like
90s.
Blade better
Yeah.
than the X-Men movies.
You had Blade in the late 90s, but the thing is, a lot of people didn't realize that Blade was a comic book
Right.
property. And they didn't play it like that either at first, you know. And so when you get to 2000 and the X-Men come out, it was something new. It was something, you know, really just markedly like, can this even be a thing? Because everyone looked at what happened with Batman and Robin and basically said the superhero genre is dead. And it feels like everyone talks like that, like it was all these years later. But when you really think about it, it was only 3 years later that blatant superheroes showed back up on the big screen. And it was fairly successful. I would say that was the proving ground for what would come about with Spider-Man a couple of years later. Because Spider-Man was the first real X-Men. I know we remember it fondly. It's good. Blade, we remember it fondly. It's good. But those things weren't quite the event that in the pop culture, in the whole zeitgeist, in that people want to remember them as being. It was Spider-Man in 2002 that was a kind of the cultural touchstone moment of superhero movies, because Spider-Man was still a more familiar character. You were right out of the 90s with that Spider-Man, the animated series. It ran for a good long while on Fox. The X-Men had it too, but because they were so scared of doing costumes on screen, Bryan Singer wouldn't even let I didn't realize this until I saw an interview with Hugh Jackman recently. You know, he's like, they wouldn't even let us read comics to find out about these things. Someone kind of told him about the whole Wolverine calls people bub. And so so when you talk about, you know, we're not and they even took a jab, you know, would you rather wear yellow spandex? You know, they were a superhero movie, but trying to keep it so accessible. Well, here comes Red and Blue Tights, man. Spider-Man swinging through the skies. Sam Raimi does a great job of that film, and then we really were off to the races. X-Men 2, I think, is the one that really solidified the X-Men franchise more than anything else, because it was just universally loved. But if there was no, but I do say, I do believe if there were no X-Men, if there was no X-Men in 2000 and it didn't do well, you probably wouldn't have seen Spider-Man. You know, that was something that was in production hell forever, and you may not even have what became the MCU on down the road.
Crazy, absolutely crazy. Go ahead, Brent.
A couple stories about one. I would agree with you on the Blade, because I had no idea that Blade was anything other than Wesley Snipes being a vampire slayer.
Right.
So I was in that world. Second, my story about X-Men 2. The first time I saw X-Men 2, I was actually in Australia in the largest theater in the Southern Hemisphere.
Wow.
It's where they do a lot of the Australian premieres in Melbourne. So like, it was like it wasn't an IMAX, but it was basically an IMAX. And it felt like I was walking into the Senate room of the the Imperial Senate room.
Yeah.
That
Nice.
chamber. It felt that big. But that's where I was able to watch X-Men when I was down in Australia for a couple months doing some student teaching.
I don't even know that IMAX was a thing for feature-length movies. Well, I guess, yeah.
It was still. It wasn't big.
Right.
But it
It's
was
more like
like
documentaries, right? Like,
I guess,
Yeah.
I guess Attack of the Clones had done the IMAX thing at that point, because Attack of the Clones was 2002, and they actually had to trim out. It had to be edited down to fit on the reel,
right.
for an IMAX movie.
Right. So it was right on that borderline. I don't think it was IMAX, but it was like right in that screen.
Yeah.
It was awesome. So it was really one of those cool experiences that I had to be in that movie theater and to watch it there. So,
well, we're talking. Go ahead.
I just want to say I love the original X-Men series. 3, I wasn't a huge fan of, but I loved 1 and 2.
Yeah.
I could watch those any day.
Well, we're definitely in the Marvel world, so let's keep it going that direction before we get into the D23 and Star Wars talk and all that. I haven't had a chance to talk to anybody here. Obviously, D-Doc and I did like an hour on Deadpool and Wolverine. Has everyone seen it? Has anyone not seen it?
I'm not seeing
I
it.
have.
Okay. Alfie, before we jump into other topics, we didn't get a chance to get your feedback on it. Do you have any overall thoughts on, well, yeah, you saw it. Of course you saw it.
Yeah, we went together.
We were there. But we haven't talked about it.
No,
Any
Tell me, have you seen Deadpool and
Have you seen it,
Wolverine?
Alfie?
I
Like,
literally
Hey,
sat next to you
hey.
the entire movie.
I used to drink Diet
Um,
Coke, and I drank a really sugary Coke, so my mind just went in that. So go ahead, Alfie.
I was hopped up on Oxycontin.
That's
so-
right, from the
Yeah.
kidney stones.
That's right.
You guys were quite the pair.
Yeah.
as always, as
Um,
always.
Yeah.
Kidney stones and diabetes. My autobiography title.
That's actually a good. That could be a
That-
good title.
that
That is
is.
pulling me in. I want to know a little bit more about
That's
it.
a podcast right there.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, the podcast, Kidney Stones and Diabetes, an American health crisis.
Go ahead, Al.
It was, in all honesty, it was probably the best Marvel movie since Endgame.
Wow, easy
And it
now.
is-
It was great.
I know it's fresh, so that always is going to bump up how you feel about a movie, but it's easily one of my favorite Marvel films.
So, I mean, so not only is it fresh, but it's also you saw it in the movie theater and you saw it with a group of guys and you saw it in an environment that allows you to laugh and have fun. And so, in that environment, it's going to always bump it up a little bit, right? I feel I've heard the same thing. Joe and I, we have a mutual friend, Brian, your banker, Brian.
Yep.
He sent me a message and said, "Have you seen it?" And he said the guys that he went with, one guy started choking on his drink because he was
Yes.
laughing so hard, because it just something came out of the blue and it took him by surprise. And I think he said somebody else spit the actual drink out because they didn't expect to see what happened happen. And I don't know exactly
I
what
think
was going on in those senses, but yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
going to guess at what happened and say that at that moment I said, there is no fucking way you are doing this.
Okay.
I'm
Oh.
sorry. I'm just being honest. It was that amazing. And it lived up 100% to the hype. It was everything I'd been waiting. You know, I always bring this up. I think it would have been like 1998 was when I first read in Wizard magazine about the possibility of the MCU. And I've been waiting that long to see this. And to actually finally see it, it lived up to 100% of the hype. It was amazing. That moment.
I enjoyed it thoroughly. I hope they keep making more Deadpool. I know it's completely vulgar and I know it's completely off color, but
But that's
Man,
what makes it so good.
it's just so funny.
You know, there's a terrible Marvel movie with Nicolas Cage. And I hate that this happens to me all the time. The name just went right out of my
It's Ghost Rider.
Ghost
It's
Rider.
Yeah.
God, I can never remember that. That movie is awful. But at the same time, I can respect it because the people who made the movie didn't try to change who Ghost Rider was. It's a
Right.
skeleton that's on fire. And they put it on film.
Well,
On a motorcycle.
he's a
On a
little bit
motorcycle.
more than that. Yeah.
Visually is what I'm saying.
Right.
And
My
that's what I really liked about it's what I've always liked about Deadpool is they
They're not
haven't pulled any punches on who he is.
Well, I do think for me, and I said this about the first one, and really even the second one, my problem really comes down to the vulgarity. I'm not a prude, but like I feel like there's some things that just get taken a little bit too far, and
Sure.
other than that, but I do like the fact that it's like, listen, they understand that Deadpool is a character that breaks the fourth wall. That somehow, for some reason, he understands what everyone else doesn't get, and he makes all the inside references, and so I can totally appreciate everything they do with that. And I have gone ahead and spoiled myself on all of the cameos and all.
Oh.
Yeah. Well, because I
Oh.
don't know that I'm going to see it in the theater. So, you know, and I had one big question that I needed to know, and when I got the answer to that question, I'm like, okay, I'm happy, and that's fine.
Now we'll do this. Spoiler alert. Spoiler alert.
Sure.
Go ahead, Steve. What was the question you need to know?
I just need to know if that was something that happened, you know, and so to kind of see what went on, I'm like, all right, I'm satisfied. But I was also just amazed at like the absolute live action recreation of an iconic cover of an X-Men book, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And then to know all the different people that showed up. I think I would have rather Taylor Kitsch showed up than Channing Tatum, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
But I understand why Channing Tatum. But we recently for Patreon went back and rewatched X-Men Origins Wolverine over at Geek Out Loud on the Patreon for Geek Out Loud. And I was just, man, that dude, is it Taylor Kitsch? Isn't that his name?
I only saw it once.
From Friday Night Lights, he was John Carter of Mars.
Oh yeah.
Anyhow, he plays that character, and I was just like, man, I really miss this dude. I think he did a really good job in that role, and would have liked to see him go further with it. You know, it was so. But like I've seen the funny bits about, you know, he's going to say it, and what? And I appreciate that it really ends up being a love letter to all of those movies
100%
that paved the way for everything that happened in 2008 and beyond. You know, because listen, leading into and I did a whole bit on, or a whole talk about this on Geek Out Loud a long time ago. You don't get Iron Man in 2008 without Ang Lee's Hulk, without Spider-Man 1, 2, and 3. You don't get Thor and Captain America without the X-Men. You don't get to Avengers Endgame without going through Ben Affleck as Daredevil and Jennifer Garner as Elektra and all of these different things, because they were doing everything they could to make superhero properties viable. And they did. And I'll go ahead and say this too. I don't think you get there without Smallville on WB and later on CW. Smallville ran for 10 years. It's the longest running live action superhero show ever, and it's the longest running live action Superman show ever. And so you definitely don't get the stuff they had on the CW later on with the Arrowverse and all that stuff without Smallville. But I don't know that we get to Endgame without all that stuff. I mean, those things really did lay the foundation for people like Kevin Feige, who was involved, you know, in a lesser role, of course, he worked his way up to being what he is. But you don't get to the place where they got to with Jon Favreau and Robert Downey Jr., you know, making a believable, lovable Iron Man. And Iron Man was a C-list character at best in Marvel Comics. And to make him a household name, that's huge. That's huge, you know. And so, and I guess, you know, anyone can say, well, you could take it all back. You wouldn't get that without, you know, Superman the movie. Absolutely. You know, Superman the movie sits in a pinnacle place in my life and in my movies and my superhero fandom, you know. But I think that when you're talking about what took place with the X-Men, you know, 20th Century Fox doing that and then moving forward was just, you know, you don't get everything that we've enjoyed today without that.
I want to go one step past that. I agree with everything that you're saying about the movies world, but I also think the zeitgeist, the popular culture world, you wouldn't get where we're at with nerddom and the acceptance of nerddom without the Big Bang Theory. I think the Big Bang Theory blew up the idea and it made it acceptable to be out and proud about your nerd culture. I think that helped bring nerd culture to the front. Them wearing the superhero shirts, I can't take away their influence. I think I didn't know about it until after the writer's strike. So the people that watched it pre-writer's strike, then post-writer's strike, but it grew in popularity post-writer's strike. And I almost feel like it coincided with a lot of like the MCU. So they could experience the MCU on the television show to make it acceptable to experience it in the popular culture.
Yeah, I think that what they did is I think that Chuck Lorre saw where things were headed, you know, in the culture, because the Big Bang Theory was 2007 when it first aired. And so you were right on the. You'd had Batman Begins. We were looking ahead to the Dark Knight at that point already.
Right.
You'd had all these other things happen, and I think that I think in some ways they probably did make it a little more socially acceptable, or at least gave people an understanding of what was going on. But I also think that just to take it back to the Star Wars thing, the Kyle Newman's movie Fanboys, it's all about the guys trying to see episode 1 before it comes out, before their friend dies. That whole thing ends and they're camped out waiting to see the Phantom Menace, and dude's brother, who's been given a hard time, the whole movie, shows up and he's like, "What are you doing here?" He's like, "Bro, I love the wars." And I think what started to happen in 2008 moving forward is all of us guys who had been there the whole time, were able to come out of the shadows, because there were a lot of other people who liked this stuff as kids. They might have read some comic books back in the day, but they didn't hang with it, which a lot of people don't. And now this stuff's come back around, and it's like, it's that nostalgia kick. It's what happened during the pandemic when, collecting became absolutely ridiculous. Prices went up because everyone was sitting at home with a little bit extra money from the government to spend, and decided to try to buy back their childhood. And you're like, and you're sitting over here as someone who's a longtime collector, or who had just started doing something on YouTube called Back to the Wax Packs. And before you know it, I can't buy non-sports trading cards anymore that way, because everyone stuck this weird value on everything. And it just, right. And I think that there are these moments in time that give people permission to do these things. And I think maybe the Big Bang Theory was a part of that. It was, they had to find that balance, though, because those guys were losers until they weren't, right. and you really had to kind of learn to love all their little things and foibles and stuff.
And I'm not saying it was, I just feel like it had a huge impact on everything. I think it's part of it, right? Yeah. I think all the movies that you talk about, the start of the MCU, the Iron Man, and getting into that, I think all of those are obviously correct. But I think that Big Bang Theory, I want to give them credit, because it seems like it coincides almost and matches up.
I feel like they were riding a wave, but I do think that because it, a sitcom comedy always makes things more accessible for people. And I think that comedy made those things accessible to just a regular audience a little bit more.
Hey, real quick, as this started way back on the Deadpool Wolverine, do we think Mr. Levy, who's going to be making a Star Wars movie, do we think that brings Ryan Reynolds or anybody like that into the Star Wars realm when he makes that Star Wars movie? Because I'll tell you what, I watched Free Guy again today. Yeah, I know. I love it. He carries around a lightsaber and battles the dude at the end of Free Guy, and he looked pretty good handling the lightsaber. So just saying, just throwing that out there. So,
I mean,
my 2 cents.
We always want the next thing, the next thing, the next thing. I don't hold out, and I'm not going to hold my breath until the next thing is actually in the theater. So whoever directs it, I'm going to go see it because I want it to be in the theater, because I want to watch it. They're promoting all of this at D23. I know I'm not segueing right away, but like D23, they showed some scenes from Mando and Grogu. It's going to the theaters. I will tell you, sitting here right now, I don't know if it's actually going to make it to the theaters until it's actually in the theaters. With the number of things that happen in the world of movie making and in the popular culture, and the track record that Lucasfilm has had, all of those added up make me feel like I'll believe it and you'll get my money, but I'll believe it when it's actually in the theater, or I see a red carpet premiere.
Okay. As we're in that topic right there, how about for our good friend Steve Glosson, we talk a little bit about the next Captain America movie and a possible red-colored creature or person that's going to be in that movie. Do we know? So Red Hulk is...
Yeah, Red Hulk's in it. There was the big wide release teaser or trailer that was shown, and you see him at the very end, and then what they showed at D23 was a more direct shot of it. And I hate that because I don't hate the Red Hulk. I mean, I don't care for it, but I hate that they were so blatant about who the Red Hulk is and everything. Because when that happened in the comics back in 2006 or 7 or whenever it was, it was a mystery. And it was the question of who is this person? Who is this person? And then it comes out. And I know they can't quite do that. But I'll say this. When Winter Soldier was coming out, on the lead up to Winter Soldier all those years ago, remember that movie? Everyone was just so casually out there talking about it's Bucky. It's Bucky. I would not say that it was Bucky on Geek Out Loud because I knew it was. But I also knew that it's wrong to assume that everyone has read the comics and everyone knows the identity of this person. And I would have rather people not be able to say, well, Steve spoiled it for me on his show and be surprised, when they go in. But I was just so shocked that everyone's just like, oh, yeah, it's Bucky. It's Bucky. Like, you don't want to be spoiled, but you think this is such common knowledge, but it's not. And so
You're right.
The identity of the Red Hulk, I mean, I think it's pretty common knowledge now. The only other issue I have with it is it's like when Sony did the Venom movies with no Spider-Man, you really need the Hulk to do Red Hulk. And I know they're going to have the leader in this and everything. And I'm like, come on, man, if we're going to do this, just give us another Hulk movie. And I know there's still issues with Universal and everything, but dang. Come on, guys. Here we go, And I know this is going to play into Thunderbolts and all that mess, but,
Go ahead.
Thunderbolt? Like, no, you just dropped the Thunderbolts? What are you talking about?
Yeah, you didn't watch the trailer?
Look, I've watched portions of the trailer. I haven't watched a lot of the trailer. I'm too wrapped up
Thunderbolt.
in my tabletop.
You haven't watched the Thunderbolts trailer?
I have no idea what you're talking
I didn't know that. Now, there's not really a
No.
Thunderbolts trailer. There was a little bit of a
Yeah,
sizzle reel kind of thing.
Yeah. I'll give you sizzle.
Yeah, but the Thunderbolts, I don't know what you know about the Thunderbolts.
I know nothing.
Not
Okay.
much.
I know nothing.
I know
Um,
who's
no,
on the team,
Let me,
at least in the sizzle reel.
right. So the Thunderbolts are basically a group of people who are anti-heroes at best, have been villains at worst, depending on what era of Thunder. And they're going with more of like all these people that have been in these Marvel movies, like your U.S. Agent and the Black Widow's sister and a couple other people. They're going to be a team, and they can't be Avengers. They're going to be the Thunderbolts, Justice Like Lightning, and so that's going to be what it's going to be. Okay.
So is this like the Marvel version of like the Suicide Squad?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Kind of
Like, I mean, just for a parallel for my my pre-brain,
Thundercats.
right? That's
Yeah,
only-
it's the Thundercats. Yeah,
Thundercats. Oh, I mean Mothra or whatever.
in the comics, the Thunderbolts were one of the best ideas to come out of Marvel in a long, long time. Because initially in the comics, and everything had to be just right for this to be the case. But there was this whole thing back in the 90s called Heroes Reborn.
Mm-hmm.
And what had happened is Professor X had decided to telepathically pull all the evil out of Magneto. Well, when he did that, it created this super being thing called Onslaught. And Onslaught had this really pumped up armor. I mean, not all full on 90s art, I'll make the long story short. Onslaught is defeated, but it takes all of the non-mutant superheroes basically to defeat Onslaught. So it appears as though the Avengers and the Fantastic Four and others have all given their lives to save the world, maybe even the universe, from this Onslaught being. What had really happened is Franklin Richards, the most powerful mutant in the world, Reed and Sue Richards' son, created a pocket universe that they all went into. But Marvel used this as an opportunity to relaunch all these comics. I don't know if you've ever seen like the big-chested Captain America where he's standing to the side and it looks like he's several Ds or whatever. That's from the Heroes Reborn era. And so they retold all these different origins and stories, and it went for a year or so, and then you had the Heroes Return. Well, meanwhile, you still had the Marvel Universe proper, wherein were the X-Men and the Incredible Hulk was still there, and a few others. And so this new team pops up. and they're called the Thunderbolts. And they're just some great characters, man. There was this American flag looking guy called Citizen V, V for victory. You had just all these different superpowered people, you know, and they stepped in to do the right thing and fill in for these heroes that had gone, and they were going to do this all in their honor. Spoiler alert, this is a 20-something-year-old spoiler alert at this point. The end of the first issue, they're all talking about, they've had their first adventure and everything, and they're standing there talking, and Citizen V pulls off his mask, and he's got this really scarred up face, and he puts on the hood, and it's Baron Zemo and the Masters of Evil. All of these Avengers villains from years gone by who have now stepped in, and they're playing the part of hero to get all the access to all of the things that the Avengers had. So like all of your government codes and secret access and that sort of thing. And so the first 12 issues are while all the heroes are gone. And it really is about these people, like the guy who was the original Beetle. You know, he's part of this now, but he's starting to feel really conflicted because this hero thing is really working. And he likes it, and he likes being, and so all of so you've got some criminals that are kind of becoming reformed through all this. And then of course the Avengers show back up on the real Earth, and everyone comes back, and it's big fight. And so the Thunderbolts went through some changes after that. But the last time, one of the last things was, it was like Winter Soldier and Red Hulk and just different characters were part of it, and it really was more like a Suicide Squad government issue kind of thing than anything. And I think that's what they're going with here, is kind of like
as Brent always says, just make it entertain me, and I'll go check it out. Right?
That's kind of been the challenge since Endgame, hasn't it?
Yeah.
And that, so, but it takes. I'm pretty easy to entertain, but
yeah,
this is where I don't know a lot of the comic world. So all of the Marvel, I'll go to my tabletop game because that's what I play. There's a Marvel tabletop game.
Yeah.
It's called Marvel Crisis Protocol.
Mm-hmm.
It's a different scale, a little bit bigger, but it's all Marvel characters. They release Marvel, and people play it at the store. And I watch them play it. It looks cool, but I know none of the characters. And like the characters that they play, like they get really into the powers that the company gives those characters because they match the Marvel lore. And they get really into it, and they'll tell me all about this person. And I listen to them because, I mean, it's cool, but I'm like, yeah, you've lost me a lot of it, because right now, the only characters that I know are the Marvel Cinematic Universe characters.
Sure.
I've heard some other stuff. There's also a not a computer game, like a mobile game called Marvel Snap. It's an online game. It's kind of where you sit on the toilet kind of a game. And it's a card game, which again, the characters in it they have characteristics and they have attributes like they do in their Marvel world,
right.
And then you try to assemble. So I've heard of Onslaught because of Marvel Snap.
Yeah,
I've heard of Dino and Dino Girl and there's something like that.
Moon Girl and Dino Boy. Yeah,
there you go. I've heard of that because I've heard of Squirrel Girl I've heard of these guys because of those games. But I know nothing of their background. So the education you just gave me is something that I was also, as you were talking, it kind of gave me the boys kind of connections, but then they were actually kind of going to the good and not necessarily staying in the evil and just
right. And the thing is these were established supervillains who were initially the first Thunderbolts team.
Yeah.
So you're talking about people that had been, the Masters of Evil was like the anti-Avengers for the longest time. And so it wasn't that they were even, but they were playing as though they were good to achieve all this stuff. And then what happens is some of them, like I say, start getting reformed because of what they're doing so good. But then it all changed. Stuff changes in comics. Comics is an ever-evolving medium and an ever-evolving storytelling kind of thing. You can't keep having the conflict of, am I going to be good or not, for 30 years. So, but back to the original thing with the new Captain America or what have you, and Red Hulk. Look, great. Red Hulk's in it. Wonderful.
Okay.
And can we just spoil it? Can we just say it? Is it pretty obvious when he stands up in that D23 footage, that everyone's seen?
They've already
He's doing
said
interviews right now talking about it.
right.
So
They've
it's
already
not, you're
come
not
out and said
spoiling
that,
anything.
right.
So Harrison Ford being a Hulk is pretty cool, I mean, like,
Right. And
Yeah.
not only that, like they've shown other footage from D23 and or they've showed other footage. At least I haven't seen the full footage, but I've seen pieces of it, if that makes sense.
Right.
That he's the president as well.
yeah. General Ross is the president. Yeah, Thunderbolt
Which-
Ross. Yeah.
Okay. So I mean all of that is just new storyline to me. So
Right.
if I take this, I will go into this with no preconceived notions
Yeah.
of anything other than just entertain me, and this will be my canon.
Well, you understand that he's replacing William Hurt as Thunderbolt Ross, right?
Mhm.
So So
Okay.
William Hurt is the one that was in like when they did the switch over
Prisons.
when when they figured out that Shield was actually evil, he was the one at the head of it.
No.
No, he was
William
the
Hurt
one
was
that
General Thunderbolt. He was General Thunderbolt Ross. So in the Incredible Hulk with Ed Norton,
Oh, I
He was
don't
the
think
one
I've-
pushing the Geneva Accords.
okay. So in
The
Civil War, he
Sokovia
was the one.
Accords.
He was the Secretary of Defense pushing the Geneva Accords.
Okay.
Mustachioed man, and then when in at the beginning of Endgame, when they come back, he's on the hologram call there with Rhodey, and he's like, "Arrest these people," and they just hang up on him. That's Thunderbolt Ross. That's General Ross. He's got a big. You should watch The Incredible Hulk with Ed Norton.
Yeah.
It's the one that took place right after Iron Man in 2008. It's good. You'll enjoy it. You'll be entertained, I think. But he's in it, and so he's made his way now to being president. Is the whole thing. William Hurt, the actor, passed away,
Right.
and so they cast Harrison Ford. And that's why there's the whole conversation about no mustache and all that stuff, because Ross has a mustache throughout all the comics, but I guess Harrison Ford will grow a beard, but he won't grow a mustache. I don't know.
Hey, speaking of all this with the Avengers, everything else, so we haven't spoken at all, Brent, Alfie. I mean, we have a little bit in the text chain, but the whole Avengers, Strange Wars, Doctor Doom, all that kind of stuff. Have you guys had any thoughts on that before we go back to our library of Marvel? Here was
Thoughts of what do you mean by thoughts? Do you mean like
mean,
Robert
like,
Downey
what-
Jr. being
yeah,
Doom?
Robert Downey Jr. is Doom. I mean, going into the Strange Wars, all that stuff.
Secret Wars.
Secret Wars. I keep saying Strange. I got it in my head. Sorry. People, I
don't-
like Lori. My wife comes to me and she goes, "How can Robert Downey Jr. play Doctor Doom when he's Iron Man?"
Because they'll be in a different universe. Secret Wars, and I'm just to make it quick, should be the one that brings all the universes back to the sacred timeline. So it's going to end the whole multiverse that they're doing.
Kind of like how Deadpool talked about in his 9
Right.
different breaking of the fourth walls, talking about the multiverse.
Yeah, just go ahead and take the L. It didn't work.
Yeah.
That's right.
Dude, Loki was so weird.
Yeah.
And that was the one that went into the multiverse. I couldn't follow it.
Oh wow, I loved season 2 of Loki. I really enjoyed it.
I never watched season 2.
didn't
I
watch
was
season 2.
so off by the Marvel series by that point. I never finished Hawkeye, and that's where I stopped.
Season 2 of Loki's fun. It's like an extended episode of Back to the Future. It's like an extended version of Back to the Future 2 in a lot of ways. It's a good time. Ke Huy Quan Short Round is just fantastic in that season, and it's an easier storyline to follow, I think, than even the first season was. And I had a lot of fun with it. So
Okay. So
They just didn't hit right for me. They felt a lot like the Netflix Marvel shows.
yeah,
Where there were like 2 important episodes out of the whole thing.
yeah.
And it's just too much of the same thing over and over again.
See,
It's like
I
how
really-
many Marvel series, going to the Netflix ones, how many Marvel series can you have where they just strictly do Kung Fu? You know what I'm saying? At some point, you need a little bit more than that.
So it like where was I going to go with that? I liked the Winter Soldier because I don't think it made any references to not Winter Soldier, the Falcon. Falcon and Winter is it
Yeah,
Falcon and
yeah.
Winter Soldier? Yeah.
Mhm.
So I like that series because they didn't make any references to things that you had to know within the Marvel series. Like Loki, I feel like was for the Marvel fan.
Yeah.
I felt lost being the fan that I am, just being the outside fan. That's why I was so lost with it.
Yeah.
But when you
Yeah.
talk to somebody who was a super fan or somebody who read the comics and was in the Marvel world, they loved everything about Loki because they could see where it was going and they knew where it was going. And I was gone.
Yeah.
Moon Knight, people who were in the Marvel world loved Moon Knight. I was gone.
Was not one of those
No
people.
idea. With that?
I didn't enjoy Moon Knight. I didn't finish Moon Knight. Yeah.
Yeah, WandaVision. I enjoyed WandaVision. I really loved the idea of the first couple episodes where they went through television history and like it was in this alternate because she had created this alternate world.
Yep.
It was Agatha all along. I'm interested because I didn't. This is another one where I feel like you had to be a Marvel person to know that was Agatha and who Agatha is, and to figure out that there was like that poll going on because it was lost on me. I had to have somebody who was a Marvel person interpret it for me.
Yeah.
Just like I was his Star Wars interpreter when I think it was Mandalorian season 2 was going on, and who like Boba shows up, and they're like, "Was that Boba? Who is that standing looking over Tatooine?" And I went up to him and I was like, "Who is this? Like, what? Why should I?" And I was just lost, right? Like, so a lot of it, I feel like the movie or like that phase of Marvel was an ode to the fan, and the casual fan was lost.
I think what happened is I think they became victims of. I think it was one of those things where the people who were writing these shows and getting involved became victims of what a lot of geeks become victims of. We'll start talking about things and expecting people to know exactly what we're talking about, and people won't have a clue. And so when it comes to, I think WandaVision, I agree with you. Those first few episodes where they were doing different TV styles and you kind of found out eventually why she did that, because that's how she found comfort as a child when all the wars were going on and everything. But it puttered out in the end. It really did. Like and to me, more than what the Netflix shows did, where like you're right, Alfie, there'd be 2 or 3 important episodes and the rest of it just seemed like filler, even though there were only 9 or 10 episodes or some of those things. These felt like you would build up to something and it would just fall flat in the end. The Winter Soldier, the Falcon and Winter Soldier, like started out so strong to me. And then in the end, it's like, we're going to preach you a sermon and suddenly he's Captain America. Like it was this thing that was supposed to be really cool and neat, but because they drug their feet getting there, or they didn't really set things up well enough when they got there, it just fell flat. And I think that's kind of the and same thing with that first season of Loki. They go through all this stuff, and the last season felt like that scene from Matrix Reloaded where you walk in there and the architect's just talking, and you're like, what? This is so this whole big season finale is just a conversation, and then someone gets stabbed. And that's why I liked season 2 of Loki, is because they did a really good job of, here's the story, and it built to a big climactic, final thing like you want a superhero movie to. But I do think that the Marvel people got a little bit guilty of being too self-referential, so that there's no easy access unless you go all the way back to a certain point. And 2, being and not necessarily going with the comics, but just expecting that they almost were drunk on their success, because like, well, we'll put it out there. It's Marvel. Everyone loves Marvel. And so if something falls flat, then it's like your fault that it fell flat because you don't know it or you don't understand. And it's like, no, it wasn't good. And
the movies self-reference the movies, right? So
right.
I felt like I was in the know because I'd watched the movies and I would catch up on those references. Yeah. I feel like when they went to the Marvel shows, the references were of the comics that or of not of other stories that I don't have prior knowledge of. So I didn't feel like I was in the know, and I felt like the biggest outsider.
Well, it's like the world between worlds in Ahsoka. It's like that came directly out of Rebels. And if you're just a casual Star Wars fan and you never watched Rebels because you're like, I don't really like the animated stuff, and all of a sudden here's Ahsoka in this weird place, you're like, how is she here? What is she dead? Is she alive? What's going on? And then what's this big statue dude's on? What's going on there? At the end and so, yeah, it's the same. All of these things where everything's connected and everything matters, it has become a bit. It's cool on one hand, but on the other hand, it becomes this burdensome thing where the ease of entrance, the ease of access, is just not there.
And I feel like fandom is pushing the studios to be that connected.
Absolutely.
The fandom is pushing it that way. And if you're connected to the fandom, there's all that, but they can't do it as much as, like, I don't know, like I there's just this push, and I call it the Marvel effect when I talk about it, because I think it's the cinematic universe and how good it was that everybody wants everything to have that interconnectedness. And if there's not that interconnectedness, this thing is crap. And this thing needs to, why are they even doing this?
Right.
But you lose again. I just felt like the outsider with that. I don't feel like
the flip side of that. Yeah. The flip side of that is the studio says everything matters. Everything is canon now. Everything, we did away with the EU. We did away with the legend. And so everything matters now. Oh, they're upset about a birthday, and
right.
And to me, I'm like, no. You can't have it both ways. Oh. You can't at once say everything matters and is canon and then turn around and say, well, we just changed this because we wanted to use this character in our little show.
I remember listening to you have that discussion on your show recently, Steve.
Yeah, I got goaded into it.
Do you and Alfie have the same cup? Can I see you guys both?
Probably. We're the same age. I'm ashamed to say I have a Stanley. It's gray.
This is Stanley. Yeah.
Oh, man.
I mean, when they took a sip, it looked like they were both like a dark gray Stanley. So I had
this one's actually like army green.
Yeah. We will look to the future instead of looking to the past, because we got to share a recent show on Disney Plus with Alfie, and we got to hear plenty of comments on that. Steve, I don't think you watched the most.
I didn't watch the second of it. Yeah, didn't watch the second of it.
So there's no even real reason to ruminate on that. Let's just go and talk about the future.
Hey, yeah, you mentioned that Mandalore Grogu thing that Brent doesn't believe is going to happen. And Brent, I totally get that. I totally understand. I'm the same way about a lot of things. But how about Zeb, huh?
That's amazing.
But
it looks like, so to me, it looks like, so he's flying in a Razor Crest, I think was what shows up, or a Razor Crest type flight. So there's a part of me that feels like this isn't going to be forward Mandalorian. There's a part of me that feels like some of this is going to take place in between season 1 and 2. I
hope not. I hope he gets a Razor Crest.
You have to get a Razor Crest back, because otherwise, how do you have buddy movies?
Yeah, I want to get out of I want to get out of that Naboo Starfighter and get into a proper Razor Crest again for him. I think that's probably one of the things that they're wanting to do in the film. It's just like, if you wreck the General Lee, you got to get it fixed up.
Yeah, but would they ever wreck the General Lee? Did the General Lee ever get wrecked?
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I didn't watch it enough. I knew it was.
Take it to Crazy Cooter.
They'd take it to Cooter, and Cooter'd have to fix it up for him. They'd have to do some body work and stuff.
But they did.
Or it's like that episode. It's like that episode of Knight Rider where Kit got beat up by a big old thing, and he got scared. Kit was scared to do anything after that.
But they didn't completely obliterate it. They didn't completely obliterate Kit. They didn't completely obliterate the General Lee.
I think they did, and I think they had to rebuild Kit from with nothing but a CPU. But what I'm saying is there are other Razor Crest out in the galaxy.
Sure,
and so I think if Mando comes into contact with one, he's like, that's what I need. That's what I want. If we're going to be bounty hunters proper, we can't have this little Naboo Starfighter.
Well, and that was such a big deal when that got destroyed. People who had spent money and said, "Hey, they
just had $500, $600,
yes,
like HasLab."
They're like, "Can I get some use out of this besides just that one season right there?" I mean,
look, I'll tell you this: how did Star Wars end? The original movie, the Death Star was blown up. I've got an awesome Death Star playset, man. And I just think that I didn't have a problem with that because people got it for either the collectability of it or whatever the case may be. The reason no one got it because they were going to play the adventures of Mandalorian.
Nobody
in his
plays
Razor
with
Crest.
toys anymore.
No, they don't.
We played with our Razor Crest a whole lot, but we didn't buy that one.
You bought the
Mission
smaller
Fleet.
version.
You got the
Mission
Mission
Fleet
Fleet.
is-
Yeah.
Yeah, of course
Yeah.
you're going to play with
That
that
makes
one.
sense. Well,
You're not
so
going to play that for the $500 toy. I'm sorry.
So I look, that movie, okay, they've got some stuff out there. We've got people involved with Favreau, Filoni, all that kind of stuff. Great. I'm going to cross my fingers that we saw some bits of it in that little sizzle reel there that I feel like it could be on the horizon. And it's already a proven product, right? Like Disney wants more Grogu out there because Grogu makes them money. So it's a good thing moving forward. I was one of those people that at the beginning of, I'm going to hop to the other things they showed, Andor, the first season, in the first few episodes, I was one of those people going, is this going to be for me? I don't know if this is 100% me. It's slow. It's deliberate. Where is this going? But actually, now with the way they're doing the second season, what is it? 3 is Alfie? Is it 3?
I think it's 3 episodes
year?
for 5 years or something like that. Or like it'll be
Yeah,
like
it's like
5
every-
years span.
Per year, right? Yeah. 'Cause
Years
it's a
between
countdown
each
to-
one,
Yeah.
like 3-episode
Oh,
arcs.
you mean like in the narrative? There's years between
Yes.
episodes, not.
Yes.
I thought you meant like they're
No,
going to
no,
span
yeah,
out
right.
3 episodes over the course. I'm like, that's movies.
No, so it's going to be 3 episodes, count as the first year. The next 3 episodes the next year, counting down to Rogue One. But K2SO's back. Orson Krennic's in there. We got to see if that young girl gets sold off by Mon Mothma and whatever else to be a mail away bride or
Yeah,
whatever.
we have to arrange a wedding this season. That'll be.
We got to
riveting
know what's going on
television.
with Deborah and Cyril. We need to know what happens with Deborah and Cyril.
Who
But
are
I
these
am-
people?
Slap face, Cyril, the guy gets slapped by his mom. But I mean,
So
I
you
actually,
didn't spend much time on it, did you?
I-
For this?
Andor?
Yeah.
Yeah, I watched it.
Okay. I said much time on it. You didn't
I
spend
can't
much time on it.
tell you. I know Cassian Andor's names, and I can't remember anyone else's name in that show. Here's the thing. I want to
Your
reference it.
Lauren-
I want to reference a twit. Who's that?
Your Lauren was in it.
Oh, Admiral Yularen was in it.
Yeah.
I remember him. When was he in it?
I don't
He was
remember.
one of the
One of the
ISBs.
first few episodes when they showed the meeting at the ISB.
Oh, yeah. Anyway, so Michael Knipp on Twitter, you put out the calls. Anyone's got questions, and he says, "What in their opinion is a formula needed for a good Star Wars movie?"
I have that written
think-
down to ask you. Great
I'm
job.
sorry. Well, I'm just going to go ahead and jump ahead and say, based on this Andor conversation, memorable names.
I can one up you there on Andor because I say it all the time. I can respect that Andor is probably the best Star Wars in 99 out of 100 categories, except entertaining. And
Wow.
I struggled to make it through that.
Touchdown, Alfie.
I mean, and so this is also why Alfie has a problem, right? So it'll be 3 episodes of banking talk. There's a lot of dialogue. There's a lot of subtlety that is in there that people will call it like the Game of Thrones effect because there's a lot of that quiet dialogue that is setting things up and you have to read into it that people get into in this era
Well,
of TV shows.
here's what I'll say about it, though. We just finished The Acolyte. We've talked about how Kenobi looked like it was filmed on a Star Trek set a lot of the times. Ahsoka sometimes the same way, right? It didn't look expansive like a Star Wars thing. The one thing that stood out to Andor is if they can take that prologue of the first season and make it into a faster paced, more intense second season with the same type of filming, it can be a great show.
Yeah, I'll say that. I'll co-sign on that. But I'll also say this: that like the things that you said, Brent, about that series, the nuances and the conversations and all the stuff that's going on. are the very same complaints that people had about the prequels. Because when everyone else says, "Who cares about the taxation of trade routes?" and and it's like, you
Sure. So my pushback and my argument to that is, so the people that were complaining about that are in the older generation. The people that grew up on the prequels are the ones that are super fans of Andor right now. So
I don't know
the
that
age
that's
group,
true.
the age group that I have talked to, the ones
Yeah.
that I've talked to, the ones that I know from the people that watch it at the school, the ones that are in that 35-ish range, which are I would consider to be the prequel era kids.
Yeah.
So that prequel era kid is the one that is watching this and is really super fans of Andor. And to me, if that's what you're saying is the prequels, I think there's a parallel there.
Well,
That's
hey,
the people
hoist it
who-
on my own petard. Hoist it on my own petard. But I will also push back on that and say this: there is the mindset amongst a lot of people of that ilk and of that generation right now that feel like you're supposed to be a fan of everything that comes out. Everything is the best. Everything is the coolest. This is the greatest thing ever. And it's that mentality of things where it's like, I can't say anything bad about this, because if I do, what I've been taught is I'm a bad person if I don't like Star Wars.
Alfie, go ahead, follow up on that. You were saying something in there.
Yeah, I think a lot of that in that age group is that through Netflix, they've become accustomed to sitting through bad shows that have a payoff at the end. And everybody says, oh, well, you got to make it through the first 4 episodes and then it gets good. Oh, it's a slow burn. Slow burn to me is code for this show sucks until the last few episodes.
Absolutely correct. I will be honest with you, though. Game of Thrones, to me, it took to the 3rd season before I was super bought into it. I had to watch most of those episodes 3 and 4 times because timing of when I was watching it, but to watch it, to find the nuance of it, I had to watch them 3 or 4 times before I super got bought in.
Okay, so, let me ask you something, Brent. Why did you watch it then? Why did you keep watching that?
There was something that was intriguing that I wanted to see if I missed something. That's why I kept going back. Is because I wanted, like, there was an intriguing quality.
I've never had that feeling at all about anything like that. I've never been like I'll tell you this: the only thing I've ever felt that way about was Napoleon Dynamite.
I thought that was the worst.
Wow.
The first time I watched it, I was like, I don't know why everyone's telling me to watch this. And then I had watched it with the right person, and there it was. And I love Napoleon Dynamite to this day. But I could not have watched it by myself 3 or 4 times to try to get it. And same thing with Andor. Like, I watched it once it was all out. Like, I just could not. I couldn't get into it, and I can't remember. Like I say, I can't remember anyone's name from it. I remember what happened, and there were some interesting concepts, and I liked the end. I liked the rising up against the Empire there on the streets of that one planet where they were all from. But ultimately, the other part of Star Wars is it's faster, more intense. That's kind of like the mantra from way back in 77. And if you're trying to do something a little different than Star Wars, that's one thing. But the other thing is you can't forget that this thing's founded on adventure and excitement and kind of a fairy tale kind of deal. And the more we pull back, and this was one of the problems with the expanded universe back in the day and everything else, the more you dig in and feel like you've got to tell all these little stories, the more you ruin the foundation and the structure, because you're starting to pick it all apart and deconstruct it. And Star Wars, I don't think Star Wars storytelling is built for deconstruction, analyzation, theorizing, but the deconstruction that goes on because of some of this stuff, I think is a little bit out of place and out of character. And I honestly can't say that there's anything I've ever watched that got off to a quote unquote slow start. And I'm like, well, I'll hang with it and see if it gets any better. When people say you got to wait till the 3rd episode, I'm like, I don't have time. I'm getting old. I
did an Acolyte review show with Fantha Tracks with Mark Mulcaster and Mark Newbold, and they, Mark Newbold's very involved with the Star Wars universe, and he's one of the greatest guys in the Star Wars community.
Oh, super nice guy. Yeah.
And going into it, I was very nervous because they're both very positive, and I feel like I'm usually a very positive person when it comes to Star Wars. There are things that I don't care for or that aren't my favorite, but I was really happy that we all three sat down and said, "Look, it was there. It wasn't something that we're going to go, wow, we got to really go back and watch The Acolyte. We've got to, wow, it really brought this point out or that point about it." And for there are a lot of people, though, like you mentioned, Steve, that from beginning to end, oh my gosh, that was so incredible. This was the best storyline ever. If you're not watching this, you don't know what you're missing. This era fan or that era fan. If you're not watching this, you're not real fans. And it's crazy because some of it is just there.
Bad.
So
I'm easy.
I'm not afraid to say
was-
it. That show's
No.
terrible.
And I'm easy. I was entertained. You think it was terrible? I was entertained.
It wasn't just terrible. It was embarrassing for Lucasfilms, in my opinion.
yeah, Steve, I would not. If you're talking about not being able to get through the first few episodes of something, that is not a show I would recommend for you to even like jump in and go, let's see how it goes for a few episodes. It's I don't think it's going to work for you.
I was not interested in it from the get-go, to be honest. And I don't like to be down on Star Wars. I love Star Wars. Star Wars
I
has
hate it.
been, part of my part of my fandom and part of my life since I was as long as I can remember. And I've just kind of come to the point of, well, if it's something I think I'll like, I'll check it out. So with the new season of Andor, I saw a picture of something that's a potential spoiler. But it connects Andor to some other Rebels, so to speak. And so I'm like, well, that's interesting. That's kind of a nice thing. The other thing I have with Andor is, and as a big fan of Smallville, this is not fair of me to even give this criticism. And as a big fan of the prequels, it's not really fair of this criticism, but you kind of know where Andor's story is going. You know where Cassian's story is headed. And it kind of, honestly, it's just like the stuff with the Mandalorian. When they talk about there's this new threat in the Outer Rim, and there's, where that's headed, and you're just kind of like, it's just so sad because nothing good comes out of that sequel trilogy, as far as the galaxy goes. And, there's not really the happiest of endings. Everyone's dead, and so you're kind of like, oh yeah, I forgot that's where this all has to end. So with Andor, it's like, yeah, he's going to die on that beach. Get vaporized by the Death Star, basically. And so
really
that's not a criticism, but it's kind of one of those things that is always tickling the back of my mind and makes me sad, especially if they bring K2SO into this thing, because man, I love K2SO.
Me too.
He's in it.
Hyperspace Heroes, thank you for joining as always. And I would agree with you. I can't remember a real downturn in Ted Lasso. I found that for 3 seasons, found it entertaining for 3 seasons. It was good. For those of you who haven't watched Ted Lasso, yes, there's
the Beard LSD episode could possibly be a down.
Beard episode's fantastic. That Beard episode is fantastic. We were talking about fun, and Stephen Kent, who's been a guest of our show a number of times, and I think, Steve, you've even been on when Stephen Kent's on with us. Stephen Kent brought out with Skeleton Crew. He was like, hearing Jude Law talk about it, that A-list actor, hearing him talk about it, he mentions fun and how this show is fun. And Stephen Kent was like, do we think Star Wars can just pull off another show where it's just fun? Because that's what I want. Like this, between Rebuild the Galaxy, which is complete silliness and fun, just to relax.
Oh, I can't wait for that.
And be in, in Legoland of Star Wars and have some fun. And then Skeleton Crew, which, look, everybody's talking about it being the Goonies of Star Wars. When I watched that thing, it made me feel like the E.T. of Star Wars. I really
that neighborhood gave me an ET feel. Yeah.
So Steve, you've watched this, Alfie. I haven't talked to any of you guys about it. What are we feeling on the Rebuild the Galaxy or Skeleton Crew? Both just seem like sit back, watch Star Wars, and have fun. Go ahead, Alfie.
I think that's what a lot of Star Wars is missing, is the fun. There wasn't. and I understand the scope of Andor. I get that. But at the same time, Star Wars always has an element of fun to it. And when you take that away, it just isn't very enjoyable. The Acolyte had zero fun in it. And
Zero.
It's very hard to do a good Star Wars story without that fun. We always talk about the Plagueis novel, Darth Bane. Those are some good examples, but they're few and far between. Even the Knights of the Old Republic had a lot of humor in it. And when you take that away, it's very hard to pull off.
So
Brent or
I have a
Steve?
question for Steve.
Yeah.
It has to do with a statement that I think Joe knows what question I'm going to ask. Would you consider Jude Law in 2024 to be an A-list actor?
I think that Jude Law has enough credits to his name that he is a recognizable actor. I think that he brings credibility to a role. I don't know that he'd be considered like he's not A-list with like a Tom Cruise who's still A-list after all these years. He's not A-list with, but you know, he's credibility. He's got some.
He's got credibility and he's recognizable. I'll give you that, right? But Joe can't, like they all said it. D-Doc would say it, and I don't think I ever called him
an A-list actor.
I had to put the kibosh on Jude
What
Law
was the last thing Jude Law did before this? Do we remember?
The Harry Potter movies.
The Holiday, it was the Dumbledore.
Captain
Holiday.
The Holiday was, but that was in like 2000.
Enemy at the Gates puts him up at the top. Sorry.
Enemy at the Gates was 98.
Doesn't matter.
That's fine. Like that was 25 years ago.
What was the last great movie that De Niro was in? He's still riding that.
Well, but he's still De Niro. Like Jude Law never had a De Niro level run of Godfather, Taxi Cab, you know, all of those things.
We're supposed to bring all that up. You're supposed to agree with me.
I'm sorry.
Pizza Fockers.
It's okay.
My whole point of that question is I don't take anything away from Jude Law. I love what Jude Law has done. I do think he's a good actor, but I just never would put him on the list. He's not Dwayne The Rock Johnson, who has like 3 movies coming out with the D23 exhibit. Like he's not the as you said, Tom Cruise. He's not on what I would consider to be the A-list as of right now. 1998, sure, but he does have he is a good actor.
Yeah, honestly, the last thing I saw him in was Captain Marvel, 5 years ago. So, but you're right. He's got, the thing is, he's got name recognition.
Yeah,
he's a recognized, Sky Captain, The World Tomorrow, Enemy at the Gates. You name it. I have honestly not watched this trailer.
Really?
Yeah, I've seen some of the imagery and stuff. I love the little Max Rebo character. I don't know. I think Star Wars does have to have an element of fun, but you've got to be careful that it's not fun like your mama jokes.
Yes.
That's the thing. Is Star Wars is fun because of the adventure of it all. Star Wars is fun because everyone can't be quippy, everyone can't be snarky, everyone, but you've got to have that good. The thing about this being like the Goonies is, are they all going to have the different personalities like with the Goonies? Like you've got to have a meshing of these personalities come together, and I think that it could be really good and fun, and be the right kind of fun for Star Wars. Andor season 2. I didn't realize there was a trailer out for it at this point.
Yeah, a lot of the D23 stuff got trailers.
Okay.
Even like the Red Hulk, I think it's a full on trailer.
Oh, okay.
For that movie, whatever the name.
Yeah,
of the movie
I'm seeing like high def, like clear things here of different things. Even this Fantastic Four deal.
Yeah, a lot of them are on Disney Plus too. They now they are like you could have watched and streamed some of D23, but then you had to pay to watch some other stuff. Most of the stuff now I think is available for free somewhere of all the stuff that they released. But I think official trailers for a lot of that stuff came out.
They left out something from the D23 and the Fantastic Four trailer, it looks like.
Hey, Steve, speaking of Fantastic Four, have you ever visited the website superherostuff.com?
Oh, yeah, man.
They have some great
Love
Fantastic
it.
Four stuff.
Yeah, they just none of it fits me because I'm so fat.
I feel your pain. I feel your pain, Steve. Shopping in the Husky section at the age of 4.
That's right. Big and tall, man. Big and
Oh
tall.
my God, love it. Gotta love
Ah,
big
short
and
and
tall.
chubby.
Eddie Bauer. Eddie Bauer is the only thing that had the big and tall when I was a kid.
So,
Eddie-
as usual, I've monopolized all the subjects and topics and everything else. You guys go around the room here. Alfie, Steve, Brent, is there something that we haven't really covered that you want to cover, or something we want to talk about? That, I mean, we've hit the Star Wars stuff, we hit the Marvel stuff. We've talked a little bit about all that a little bit. We haven't talked about Disney Plus going up in price again, which I feel like they just did. I'm trying to think what else here. Hey, Warwick Davis got added to ICCC
Yeah.
to go along with Billy D. Williams, Brendan Wayne. I'm sure there's other people I'm forgetting off the top of my head, but
Guido, Ayla Secura, I don't know their names, but
Yeah.
those characters.
let's
The
see.
ones I can remember.
Scott-
Mark Thompson, the
Oh,
voice
Mark
actor.
Thompson,
Mark Thompson.
yes. Skeleton Crew will get an A+ if they make a kneel before Zod. Kneel before Zod. Oh, Jod is the name, correct? Is that the?
Mm.
I get you. Kneel before Jod. Okay. Thank you, Hyperspace Heroes. See, that's another thing Steve mentioned earlier. I don't know hardly any of the names of any of the characters from Disney Plus shows. It's sad. I should know
That's
more.
going to be an interesting one to check out because that has been film locked for almost a year.
I'm sorry, which one is that?
Skeleton Crew. Skeleton
Mm.
Crew finished, and they finished up post shoots. Like they've been
Yeah.
delaying it for a while. Is it because they wanted to wait for the right time? I don't
know.
because Mando premiered about the same time that this premiered. The Mandalorian season 1 started in December 19th, I think, or something like that. Somebody's probably going to fact check me, but it's somewhere in the December timeframe. And if I'm not mistaken, Skeleton Crew starting at that same time. So people are going to be home during the holidays. People will have more time to view it in the holidays, potentially.
I think the one thing that two things. D-Doc and I talked about it. The little Max Rebo character, this is happening at the same time in the Mando verse with Grogu. You talk about a moneymaker, have a scene with those two meet up.
Yeah.
You're just printing money then. And then 2, this was made with adolescent, preteen kind of kids, but it's been locked away, as Alfie said, for a while. They filmed it quite a while ago.
Pre-COVID. I want to say it's either during COVID or pre-COVID, or it spanned COVID. So
it's kind
we're
of
talking
limited.
2020.
Kind of limited unless they flash forward to these kids. They're all going to be like the Stranger Things kids that are going to be like 25 by the time the last season's done. And, it was supposed to be like year after year or whatever. So
I'm going to go back to what Steve said. Not with Disney storytelling, not every story has to be told. So if they leave you wanting more, that could be fine. Like, I think that was what Filoni has said too. He is not every story, not every Star Wars story has to be told. So I don't know. I don't know if you have to have a season 2.
No, but if it's super successful, that's what I'm saying. If it comes out as success, people are going to be like, oh, I want to know more stories about these characters. Or if it's going to feed into the Mandoverse era movies of Mando, Ahsoka, what else is going on at that time frame?
Is this in that era? Is this in the
it's in the Mandoverse era.
Like I always say, you take spoilers with a grain of salt, but I think original, synopsis of the series was that they end up in the other galaxy.
That's what I remember something about that too, Alfie. You're right. I remember that kind of being
how it would, maybe that doesn't mesh up with the other stories, but explore this other galaxy a little bit more.
Yeah.
The one where Ahsoka and Sabine are at right now.
Right.
Yeah, and also, isn't it so? Okay, so you had Captain Broccoli the Hutt, from the Pirates from Mando season 3. One guy's fighter got shut out, just like Vader's fighter, and he
took off.
He hightailed it and said, "We're losing this fight," and took off. And I believe even at like the press conferences, it's that character that's part of the skeleton.
Yes.
Like it's going to be interwoven into the Mandoverse or into the Skeleton Crew.
And they showed, wasn't the like werewolf character from the Cantina in the
Yes.
previews of Skeleton Crew? So
Not the same character, but the
Yes.
same species.
Species.
Yes.
That I don't understand why they don't just bring Hondo in as one of these pirate characters.
He is heavily rumored to be in this series.
He should be. You know, I know that they've got them all doing the Batu thing and everything, but it's like on the Millennium Falcon ride down there. But it's like, you know, everything doesn't have to be. You don't have to connect the parks into the
we don't.
movie.
I thought that was
Doesn't-
the.
Terrible idea.
Oh, by the way, on this date, was it 5 or 6 years? No, it was 2015, 2016. On this date is when when Disney announced Galaxy's Edge. It was like 9 years ago today. I think I sent it to you guys in the text chain. Did I
Wow.
not? Maybe I sent it to you on Facebook, Alfie. That's what I did. I sent it to you on direct. It was this day, like 9 years ago. Now I got to go look it up.
Yeah, that's
Memories. Misty watercolor memories.
the first time we went to Disney, they were breaking ground, I think.
I'm glad they weren't breaking wind. Breaking ground is much
Now,
better.
Come on.
Yeah, here we go. August 15th, 2015, 9 years ago. Ambitious plans to bring Star Wars to life in the two parks include creating Disney's largest single-theme land expansions ever, 14 acres each, transporting guests to a never-before-seen planet, a remote trading port, and one of the last stops before wild space, where Star Wars characters and their stories come to life. August 15th, 2015. How quick
Wow.
is that?
Wow. Wow.
Wow. Okay, Owen Wilson. Wow.
Wow.
We're going Christopher Walken there?
Yeah.
Um,
One word impersonations.
we're good at that.
Wow.
Here we go. We got another one from Hyperspace Heroes. There are X-Wings in the trailer, fully expecting a Delphi squadron and Carson. And we go to pop up in it. Yeah, because it's happening in the Mandoverse time frame. So he's going to be spread around everywhere. He's popping up in all these
Mhm.
that time frame.
It's a steady
No.
paycheck.
Right.
Now I'm just kind of watching silently this Andor trailer, and there's been a couple of images that have given me pause.
Bring him.
Well, there's a certain tower kind of structure that they show that appears to be out in the open area somewhere. Looks kind of like a small version of the Space Needle.
Like from Rebels?
Yeah. So, and then you see Saul Guerrera's
Mm-hmm.
stride.
I mean, he was in Rogue One. I think he was in the first season.
Yeah,
of
he's
the
in season
Andor
1.
for like
Was he in season 1? I forgot
for
about
like
that.
2 minutes. I mean, it was a meetup between Luthen. There was also a report when they were filming that the cave set that they were using in England for Saw's area had a massive like flooding rainstorm, and they actually had to shut down shooting at that time. So that was a spoiler news story that like kind of confirms that they're going to use Saw, but they're going to have to do it in a different way or in a different location because they couldn't use that same location again.
Did this Andor trailer, were they using stuff from Rogue One? It looked like there was a couple of shots because Krennic was in it.
Well, Krennic's going to be in.
No, Krennic is in this season.
2.
Wow.
K-Presso and Krennic are both in it.
Mm-hmm.
Saul Guerrera, yep. Mon Mothma, Slapface.
Who was Slapface? What is?
So Cyril, he was the He was like the security force guy on the first planet where Cassian got into a bar fight and killed a guy in the first couple minutes.
Cassian killed a guy.
Gunsmoked
Yeah,
him.
he gunsmoked him.
Gunsmoked him right off the jump.
Brick killed a guy.
It escalated
Where'd you
quick.
get a trident from?
You might have to hide out for a while.
Yeah, I was going to talk to you about that, Brick. You may need to lay low for a little bit
60% of the time, it works every time for
every
Cassian.
time.
Yeah,
So,
Makes no
love,
sense.
we only love Slapface because one, his mom slapped him across the face, and two, he ate blue cereal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. This is that guy that was trying to get a job the whole time.
yes, basically, he wanted to work, and he wanted to work with Deborah. Deborah was the female that he wanted to work for. She
Yeah.
just used him for his information.
I thought her name was like Deidre or
Is it
something.
Deidre? I thought it was
Deidre,
Deborah.
yeah.
It's Deidre. Sorry, I had the wrong name.
See, Steve,
But-
you know the name.
But he was crushing on her the entire time, and then during that fight of Ferrix, during that fight, the last fight at Ferrix, he turns tail and runs into a closet, and she's in that same closet, if I remember correctly, or at least they were like
They played
nose to
7 minutes in
nose.
heaven in the middle of a battle.
They
Yes,
were
they did.
nose to nose in some closet during that Ferrix battle.
Oh, God.
Hey, don't tell
Extremely
anyone
awkward
about
sexual
this.
tension.
I won't tell anyone if you don't tell anyone. I love the dark circles under your eyes. The only reason I know her name is because I saw so many of her action figures hanging on the pegs.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Steve, do you have Ollie's? Do you have Ollie's around you?
Yeah, man. There was a period of time in there over the past 3 or 4 weeks where I was going every day until they got it all put out, and I was able to procure some things. Yeah,
Yeah.
I told my wife, I'm like, I basically saved $150. So
By buying it at Ollie's versus buying it on the shelves.
yeah.
yeah,
I think I got 4 Black Series figures there this month.
I mean,
And,
listen, we've still got a Tarkin and Dengar still floating on the shelves
Mhm.
over there at our Ollie's.
Oh, wow.
Lando still has his Jabba's palace disguise
Oh
on.
my God,
Mhm.
that Lando has been floating since COVID. Since
Yeah,
we
man.
started this podcast.
the
And
general
I just
one and
I don't
yeah.
check it
Yeah.
as much as these guys do.
Yeah.
But that Lando has
Han-
been sitting on the peg since 2020.
Old man
Veteran
Han Solo.
Han, Chewie, C-3PO, Tarkin, Dengar, and Skiffguard Lando.
Yeah. And here's the thing, like Skiffguard Lando is not an unpopular figure or character.
love
Neither is like General Lando or Bespin Lando. Like, I don't understand. Like, it's almost like they overprinted them,
Had to.
because I can't imagine any Star Wars collector saying, no, I don't want a Lando figure, and I'm just, I scratch my head at it. I'm like, what was the deal? What's the deal with overprinting the Lando? I don't understand it. Like it absolutely. We've got some Grief Karga's credit
Mm-hmm.
versions on the
I
shelf
got
at ours.
Both of those there, the credit version and the regular.
Yeah. We got a Quill. I noticed the other day floating around. Tons of Eternals, Marvel Legends, and a lot of the What If stuff.
Mhm.
But I was able to pick up some cool, sweet stuff that I had to miss out on just because I couldn't afford it. And it was like Marvel Legends wise, sincerely marked down, like that whole Super Adaptoid deal, which was basically just they used a lot of people have complained about it because they were reusing the 12-inch Marvel Legends Captain America, Cinematic Universe Captain America. And they're like, and whereas Star was on his chest, they've plugged in what's basically the arc reactor, because the Super Adaptoid has all the Avengers powers. And I'm like, no, people, they literally turned the chest piece around because the star is on the back of this thing. And what the peg used to be is where the shield would plug into his back and you could carry it on his back. And I'm just like, it's one of the worst pieces of reuse I've ever seen in an action figure before in my life. And I'm so glad I didn't pay full price for it. But anyway, sorry.
No,
So
we love Toy Talk, except for
Yeah.
Brent.
The one I was really surprised that I got there was the Death Watch Mandalorian.
yes, yeah, they've got some of those at ours as well. I even
searched
picked
for
up
that one when it came out and couldn't find it, and then I find it
Yeah.
at Ollie's for $9.
I even picked up a Dungeons and Dragons owl bear.
Oh, thank you, Hyperspace Heroes. I didn't
Hey.
even think about that.
What is Glosson doing on here? Glosson never talks to me anymore. I tell you, the only way I know what's going on with Glosson is tuning into other people's podcasts.
I had a show set up with Ryfin the other day, and then he had to cancel because of timing. Yeah, I was waiting for that. Yeah.
The best part about it is the because that is one of my favorites with the gate.
Oh yeah. Look, Ryfin completely misinterpreted that whole thing.
He did.
Yeah, I was like acknowledging what Riley was saying, like, you know, and he like, that's all you give me? That's all you give me? I'm like, someone was quoting you.
It's one of my favorites.
Why?
I love that it started on this one, and then you guys had to do a special show about Hoongate.
I
loved it.
Steve, you guys have to look into like a once a month, just you and Scott, just sitting there. I know you've done it before, but just light the candle and just go and see where it goes for like an hour or two.
If Scott would give me the time, I would gladly do that. But now it's football season. It's high school football season now. Forget it. When you've got hurricane season and high school football season, Scott Ryfin doesn't exist.
And trivia season, because he does trivia 2 nights a week or 3 nights a week.
Yeah.
And then
well, you got to make extra money somehow. It's inflation, That's what I've been telling people. You got to make money where you can. That storage facility is not paying for itself. I was at the storage facility the other day and pulled out my old cardboard cutouts.
my old pizza boxes.
I had a pizza box with a Star Wars logo on it that someone drew on there, and I thought this is perfect for my collection.
When I had him on to talk about the Phantom Menace, and we went for an hour of him pulling up old paper, old newspapers, old menus from restaurants, old soda. I was in seventh heaven just watching him because he was beside himself, just loving pulling out all these things that he.
Well, look what I have here. It's the golden Yoda can from the Pepsi promo. And that I could have sent this away and won something, but no, I didn't. I thought, no, I want to keep this. This is they're going to send me some piece of junk car or something. No, I don't want to ride with Jeff Gordon on a NASCAR track. I'm going to keep this.
Yeah, that's good stuff right there. I do. I have to reconnect with him, and I'll probably have to sneak a show some odd time because he has no time to do that.
Well, yeah, he's in bed now. I mean, like, I'm really confused as to how you're still doing this right now, Joey.
What do you mean?
Well, usually you're like, well, I got to go. It's been 45 minutes, Steve. You're talking way too much.
No, this man runs on this dude goes 1,000 miles an hour. I think he crashes the hardest too. But this dude will go from 4 a.m. I guarantee it, from 4 a.m. till midnight. But then will crash hard. But when he goes, he's going 75 miles an hour when everybody else is going about 30.
And then you have Alfie, who just works 7 12-hour shifts.
Yeah, I've been up since 1:30 today. I've had to go in early all week, so
that's just dumb.
At work at 2:30 a.m.
That's just dumb.
Tomorrow?
No, not tomorrow.
Okay,
but every day, but tomorrow.
So I just learned that apparently Max Rebo is known as an Ortolan. The Ortolans, a race of stocky bipeds with long snouts and large floppy ears, from the frigid mineral-rich planet Orto. Of course, the most famous of the Ortolans, the pianist Max Rebo.
I love it.
Do you think this kid is Max Rebo's and he had a child with what's her name from the purveyor of
Nice Noodles?
Nice Noodles?
No, the purveyor of the cantina from
Boba Fett? No.
What was her name? She blew up when the bomb blew it up.
Oh yeah. Well, it was the A-list actor.
Hey, my question is the A-list actor. What was Max Rebo still doing on live? He was on the skiff when it blew up, and that skiff, there were no survivors from Jabba's sail barge. There's no
Can't
way.
be. No.
Well, I mean, maybe all of that cushion allowed him to absorb the impact from the bomb, and it just sent him away.
Yes, the Ortolans are fond of saying,
Bumbles bounce. What? I mean, we're gonna
more cushion
for the pushing.
for the explosion.
Man, I'm gonna have to cut this part out.
No, you're not, and you won't.
I'm gonna have to make a special part of that right there. Does it say that the Ortolans are musically inclined?
Yes.
No, it
Dave
just says they're
Jones, a
racist.
member of the mafia. Jennifer Beals, but what was
There
her
we go.
name in the show?
She
Yeah.
have a keen sense of smell to help them forage for food, and are able to sense food up to 2 kilometers away.
I love that Dave Jones is chiming in.
Oh, is Dave Jones here?
He just
Garza
brought up
Flip.
Beal.
Garson
I think it's
Flip.
just
There we
Jennifer
go.
Beal. There's no S, is there? Isn't it just Jennifer Beal?
I don't know.
Well,
We've
there's
got-
a Beals. There's a Beals, but that's a different person.
There's an S. It's Jennifer Beals.
Flashdance.
Beals.
Flashdance. What
Yes.
a feeling.
And it's Garza Whip. That's what it was.
In
Yes.
the series on Showtime. I can't remember what the L word.
Do you know what other series she played in the final episode?
Oh, good lord.
Frasier.
Oh.
She was the lady who sat and talked to Frasier the last episode of Frasier on the plane. You thought it was going to be a romantic, connection, but he was telling his story about how he was going to meet up with the other girl, Jennifer Beals.
The original Frasier.
I think
Yes,
that says
the
a lot
original.
about you and I.
The
You
L
brought
word
up
versus
Frasier and I
Frasier?
brought up the L word.
Okay.
Well, sometimes you want to go where everyone knows your name, guys.
I like it.
Well-
Nice pull. Nice job.
Thank you. All right. We've gone 2 hours. I know I'm not the Steve Glosson time. I'll go the third hour if Steve, Alfie, and Brent have things to talk about.
Well, I'm just trying not to be like, I feel like I've talked way too much.
We've enjoyed
Dude,
it.
you have the knowledge of the Marvel Universe that I enjoy learning about because I know
Yeah.
nothing about it.
I know nothing.
All you have to do is Google it.
It's not as fun. It's
Correct,
not as fun if
Alfie.
you don't have some fat guy just flexing on you over here. That's kind of the idea. Okay, I want to address. I really need to watch these trailers. There was something else. The Mandalorian trailer thing, the Mandalorian Grogu thing. Are they wrapping up? Like, is this supposed to be the end, or are they wanting to do future things beyond this?
Nobody knows.
I
Yeah.
don't, but
There's a part of me because of the push from Iger to get things back in theaters and not in Disney Plus because his idea of Disney Plus isn't working and he knows he can make more money in the theaters. I don't know if they're going to do more or if this will be the end of Mandalorian, but I think the number of shows are going to severely be limited based upon the direction they're going.
Yeah.
Especially
prefer
the
it to
budgets of the show.
yeah. I'd prefer it to be in the theater myself.
Well, and I think that the budget, if you lower the budget on a show, it's going to cause obviously the quality to go down. You have to work within the constraints you have, and even with something like the volume, you still have to generate the footage, you still have to generate the imagery, and you still have to, and it's just I don't know. I think that TV is not the place for Star Wars. That's the other thing I would answer Michael Nipp's question with is I think that you have to be careful about how you tell the story of Star Wars, in the format you tell it in. Clone Wars worked a lot of the times as an animated series because it was an animated series, and even then, if you go back and watch those earlier seasons of Clone Wars, they were developing models as they went along to be able to have a variety of aliens and people and characters' background. It didn't start like that. It started when you went to Jabba's palace. There were some Niktos, and that was about it. It took them years to have all these different assets and different things to be able to plug in, and because it all costs money. And so when you talk about an animated series versus a live action series, man, that live action stuff. Look, Mandalorian was lightning in a bottle. Mandalorian, for whatever reason, that first season, man, they captured magic. And the way you know is because people came out of that first episode or two saying, "This is not even this is the way." They came out saying, "I have spoken," and then we forgot that Quill said, "I have spoken," and we went to "This is the way,"
Right.
you know, and that became kind of the battle cry. And then, of course, Baby Yoda took off. You know, and so when they finally give the kid a name, Grogu, everyone's like, "I'm sorry, what?" We're just going to continue to call him Baby Yoda, you know. But it became part of the zeitgeist, and it was the one thing that, by and large, most Star Wars fans were pretty. It was this unifying thing with Star Wars fans, you know. Whereas everything doesn't have to be divisive. Everything doesn't, and I think that you're going to have a better shot of hitting the mark if you're doing things in the cinemas. And that way you can build to it. You get a better build. I think you get a further audience reach. I think with rising prices of Disney Plus and different people feeling, you know, like, I don't know if Disney wants my money because of these certain things or that certain things. You have a lot of people who don't even have Disney Plus anymore that did have it initially. And, you know, I mean, their numbers seem to be sinking on those things, and that's why they're going up in price. That's why they've got an advertisement model now, you know. So,
Steve, you mentioned it before. Not only was this show lighting in a bottle and a unifier, Lori told me, you know, if Baby Yoda wouldn't have shown up at the end of episode 1, I'm not sure I would have jumped to episode 2. She's obviously not a big Star Wars fan. She watched it because of me, but that was the hook that got her. But then the big unifier, I think, was the end of episode or season 2 with Luke. With Luke
I disagree. I think that was what became divisive again, because look what happened with Mandalorian season 3.
I think,
yeah, but that moment for Luke showing up at the end of season 2 was something that everybody loved. The problem is where do you go from there? And season 3 didn't go there.
He had so many issues, though, because of Gina Carano, because of the Rangers of New Republic, because I don't know what else, but there was a lot of different things, moving parts going on, that story didn't really flow as well as season 1 and season 2.
I think it was a unifier up until that moment. And because of the divisiveness that was The Last Jedi, and this is where I stand on this, and I firmly believe it. You can change my mind, and I may be completely off base. People hated the Luke that was in The Last Jedi because it was a different Luke than what they grew up with. It was a different Luke. It was a different characterization of Luke. They hated that Luke. When The Mandalorian brings out the Luke that they brought out, it gave them the Luke that they wanted in The Last Jedi. So it unified people, but then also gave them a voice to say, see, they can do it, and that's the Luke that I wanted. And it re-splitted the fan base. And you hear negativity coming. You hear more negativity coming from the fan base after that moment.
Wow.
I will sit here and say it needed to be Luke. It was the right move. It was amazing. But I think it re-energized that splinter in the fan base.
I honestly, now I don't travel in fan circles enough to be able to say yay or nay to that anymore, because I really got tired of Star Wars fans. But what I saw was, and I don't watch reaction videos either, but somehow all these reaction videos started coming across my feed, and it was amazing because the quote that came to my mind was Ben Kenobi in Star Wars saying, "It's as if a million voices suddenly cried out in terror and were suddenly silenced." Here, it was as a million fans suddenly cried out together, "It's Luke," and cheered.
Yeah.
But now, if that stoked some fires of negativity about The Last Jedi, I think that's a whole different subject. I think what happened after that is when you go to Book of Boba Fett and you have Mandalorian season 2.5, you know, those few episodes there, and you see Luke training Grogu, and you see all these different things happening. You kind of think, I don't know, like, I do think that there was a kind of a desire to see. I was torn about Grogu's decision to go back to Mando. You know, I'm like, can he not be the Mandalorian Jedi? Can he not be that thing that brings these two factions back together? because the whole history of the Mandalorians versus the Jedi and all this stuff that's apparent, can he not be that? And so, but then I also realized, well, we can't keep seeing Luke, and I see your point, Brent. I don't disagree with it fully, but I also think that I'm just talking about that moment in time being one of those things that caused it, because Luke got his moment that Darth Vader got at the end of Rogue One, and I think that's what people just really wanted to see, was Luke being a full powered Jedi and not just, a new Jedi and just getting by, in his battle against Darth Vader. And Luke got his butt handed to him in Empire, and Luke, only when he tapped in the dark side and got mad, was able to back Vader down a little bit, But fortunately, he stood up and got over his anger and was able to redeem his father. But Luke didn't win that day. Luke, survived the Return of the Jedi battle, and so to see Luke being this person that he was going to become and doing, I think that was big for everybody. In the same way, like I say, that seeing Vader do what he did at the end of Rogue One. You needed our original characters to have those kinds of moments, and Han really didn't get one. It's unfortunate, that when you watch, I guess it was when Top Gun came out, and everyone's like, "This is how you treat legacy characters." A little bit of what took place apparently in Picard season 3. I think people really appreciated what they did with that original Next Generation crew and that sort of thing. I see what you're saying, but I just think that moment in time, the problem is once you have a big moment like that, how do you follow up? And season 3 wasn't really the best follow up, I guess. I enjoyed season 3. I liked a lot of.
I love season 3.
Yeah,
but I get why people don't like it, because Luke's not in it.
Yeah.
Headless Ned, thanks for hopping in.
But it's not the Luke Skywalker show.
I think your statement, like 1,000 voices cried out in unison, it's Luke.
Yeah,
absolutely. I think in that moment it was fantastic. I just think that what came after it, stoked some of that passion. Right, because the decisiveness comes from the jealousy that 3 minutes of a TV series was better than 6-7 hours of a trilogy.
Well,
and
all right.
Well, I'll go back to it. Steve mentioned fun in Star Wars, and I think one of the things that goes into that puzzle that Michael.
This is Jetfire as he appeared. This was a great version they put out of him.
That one too.
He looks, but this is not the G1 when this is from the newer releases, and he's more like what he showed up as in the.
He's trying to change the subject, Joe.
He's
trying to getting a little deep, getting a little heavy, getting a little controversial. So he's
well,
trying
look,
to change the subject.
You can tell Alfie hadn't had a lot of sleep because he's just saying what he thinks. You don't do that on a podcast.
No, but that's what we do. That's why That's why we get people to listen. That's why we're honest.
No, you don't say what you think. That's have you guys learned nothing on the internet?
But that's why we hate the internet, because of that.
Right.
That's why we hate the fact that, if you don't agree with my opinion, we'll beat you over the head and you are evil because you don't agree with my opinion. We have differing opinions. If you we have hot takes, just like everybody
I don't
else.
know what y'all are talking about. I think the fact that Rose and Finn freed those man-faced camel dog things, and she said, "Now this has all been worth it," even though the resistance was about to die. And yeah, that's right. And those kids are probably going to get beaten for losing these animals, the little slave children. Let's not free the actual slaves, but we got the dog, the man-faced camel dog.
The dogs can be freed.
I think that's probably my favorite moment in Star Wars ever. I don't know what y'all are talking about.
And how do you know that they're going to survive on that planet? What if they have a specialized diet?
Dave Jones, I like your question, by the way. What are you guys' hopes for the upcoming new Star Wars animated series?
Is there a new animated series, or is he talking about the Lego show?
No, there's
because I just heard the Lego show is actually going to be 4. It's going to be broken down to 4 episodes.
They're hiring right now for a new animated series.
Look, Steve, I agree with you. I'm a big believer. Animated Star Wars is good for TV. Live action Star Wars, I would prefer it in the theater.
I don't agree with that because I think if you give it to the right person, say Jon Favreau, who has a lot of experiences in making movies in parking lots, it turns out pretty well. If you give it to somebody because you like some artsy film that they made, I don't think it turns out very well.
I mean, would you call Gilroy artsy? Because I think everybody said Andor was shot beautifully and it looks beautiful, and he has a track record of making good-looking things. So Andor season 1 was
He did Rogue One.
correct. He came in after Gareth Edwards was removed.
Yeah, and he reshot like the last third of the movie.
I'm just
All right, we're gonna go positive.
No,
Give us one more.
I think he did a good job.
no, but so would you give another show to Tony Gilroy? I don't think he wants one because I think he had this Andor story in mind. But
I don't even. Here's the thing. I'll say that to me, Andor felt like Tony Gilroy had a whole other science fiction story in mind, and he just slapped Star Wars characters and locations and ships in there and said, "This is a Star Wars story. Let's do Andor." That's what that. I think to me, that was the most grievous error of that show. One, it was boring, and two, it felt like you could have done any science fiction property, and you know, and it could just been its own thing. I mean, it could have been Rebel Moon, for crying out loud. You know, like it's that kind of, to me, that was how it felt. And I know, like, people like, and that's the worst thing. Well, it doesn't really feel like Star Wars. People hate it when you say that, but Star Wars has a feeling to it. You know it when you feel it. And to me, the story wasn't enough to do the buy-in. I didn't know there was an upcoming Star Wars animated series.
There's not one yet that I know of.
I'd like to see Star Wars just kind of take a hiatus for a few years. Give it a couple of years, and then build some anticipation. I know they won't do that because of the money, involved, but that's what I'd like to see.
Okay. Hey, I'm going to throw a couple shout outs here real quick. We will be having Mark Mulcaster of Panther Tracks and Rick Prince, who we met at the ICCC, on soon to talk about the 501st, Rebel Legion, the Mando Mercs, because they both do all that. And I really want to dig into that. So be prepared for a show on that. And then coming up here later this month to prepare for the ICCC, we will have Jim and Matt Orman from ECPC TV on with us to talk about what's coming up at the ICCC and all that kind of jazz. So while we had a little second there, just want to remind everybody of that.
Well, you said let's get back to positivity, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to be so down on everything. I because again, I want to love what they put out with Star Wars, and this Skeleton Crew does look fun. It looks like it's going to be something really cool. I enjoyed Ahsoka for the most part. That's I haven't really had a lot to say about that series. For the most part, I enjoyed it. I thought that there were some things that I didn't understand, and I don't know, if those things will have an opportunity to be answered, or if they'll really bother answering them, and I guess I'm okay with that. But I, one of the things I've just really enjoyed a lot lately is back to the toy stuff. Is seeing. I've been watching some of these some different videos that you've got a lot of toy shops now that are putting out YouTube content. One of the best is the Toy Federation up in South Carolina, and man, there's been some Star Wars stuff come in there. Like the other day there was an episode, and dude brought in like almost like practically pristine last 17 figures. Stormtrooper disguised Luke, R2 with the pop-up lightsaber. I was just like gobsmacked that dude, and he had the cards with him that that they came on. They obviously opened, but I'm like, my goodness, this is just amazing. And so I love seeing stuff like that. I love looking at people's, even though I have a lot of the vintage Star Wars stuff, I love looking at people's vintage Star Wars collections and that sort of thing. And that's kind of just keeps my fandom going. I just, it's been one of those things that, like that shot of nostalgia, that shot of the vitamin B nostalgia, that catches me. I dig stuff like that.
Sorry, Joey just texted me Stormtrooper stuff. It's
Ooh.
10 after 11, and he's texting me stuff about Stormtroopers.
Stormtroopers are cool, man. What are you talking about?
Oh, it's just wild to just see that pop. I'm like, why am I getting Stormtrooper texts after 11 o'clock?
That's awesome.
I agree. Guys, I'll go around the room. I'll let you guys close up shop. Say something good. Say something fun. Whatever you want to do, and we'll wrap up episode 282 of the Rule the Galaxy podcast. Alfie, anything to start?
I was just coming onto the show tonight. Really looking forward to talking to Steve and hearing his thoughts on just about everything. And I got my wish, so I'm happy.
You look happy. You look happy.
This is my happy face.
You should see his angry face. You don't want to see him angry, Steve.
Wouldn't like him when he's angry.
No. Hey, Headless Ned Stark, by the way. All I know is I'm going to be meeting Mark Hamill this weekend for the second time.
Wow.
Good, Headless Ned. There you go. I have not met him once yet. I'm sure Alfie's probably met him. He's met everyone.
No, I have not.
Brent, how about you? Go enjoy your school day tomorrow.
Oh, yeah, Friday. So I had to disappear one time because we got a pitching going on, and I decided to be the one to roast the vegetables. So I have some roasted vegetables I had to get out of the oven. That's why I disappeared one of the times.
Lovely.
Other than that, no, Steve, I always enjoy learning from anything that you have because you are a pop culture encyclopedia. Like Joe held up the Marvel. Well, Joe held up a Marvel encyclopedia, but I feel like you have that committed to your memory. And it's not just that it's the Marvel world, it's all of like the 80s and 90s cartoons and toys and everything and where they come from and who makes them and all of that stuff. So when I say that I have no idea of any of those, listening to you explain them is much more entertaining to me than reading it online. Like Alfie said, I should just do.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. I enjoy talking about the stuff. And if there's a chance for me to tell my version of listen, the version of Secret Wars we're going to get is not the version of Secret Wars I want. My Secret Wars is all the heroes are abducted to a whole other planet made by this entity from beyond that they call the Beyonder. And he makes them all fight for their, to get their heart's desires. And you have good guys and bad guys on this alien planet duking it out to get home. But the Secret Wars we're going to get is all of the universes collapsing on one another. And it's just going to be kind of intense. But maybe we'll get that Avengers theme pumped up. That'll be cool. So I have a question that I'd like everyone to ponder, and you guys can talk about this on your next show or whatever you want to do. One of the great standout, probably A-list characters from the original Star Wars trilogy is the Rancor Keeper. I believe his real name that they've given him is like Malakili or something like that. I really wish in the Book of Boba Fett they would have found some fat dude who was willing to take his shirt off to train that new Rancor that Boba Fett bought in that show. I think that'd have been really cool. And they had Max Rebo survive. That dude wasn't even on Jabba's cell barge, the Rancor Keeper. So I would have liked to seen someone show up like that. That would have been awesome.
He's been living on the streets ever since that moment.
Yeah, just crying, missing his Rancor. Yeah.
There is a video, a fan-made video when we started this podcast. I don't even know the name of it, but it was basically the origin stories of that guy. So it was like he goes into a cave and he finds the Rancor and he trains the Rancor as like this little kid, and they grow up together and he becomes the Rancor Keeper. Somebody in this podcast sent it out.
That's awesome.
A long time ago. It was a fan-made film from YouTube.
I say you guys start it here. Bring the Rancor Keeper back. I think that needs to be your new battle cry going into 2025.
They tried to with the HasLab and they didn't get it.
Well, that's Black Series. Vintage Collection, they could do it.
You know what, Steve? We'll start a hashtag. I can guarantee it. And since Kevin Feige follows us on
I think
on
I should be
social
that
media,
guy though.
Okay.
I feel like I could be that guy.
we can do it. Shave you down a little bit. Get some of that scruff off
I
of you.
don't know. You don't. This guy doesn't need
No,
to
no.
be shaved down.
Yeah,
I
he's
just
he's
need to take like my hairy, furry self. Throw some leather straps around me. Give me some sort of weird helmet, and I think
Yeah.
I'm the Rancor keeper.
it's just a towel over your head is all you need.
Right? Yeah.
I mean, it literally is just a covering, just a small tablecloth or like a doily. And I really think that dude ended up on the streets of Tatooine, just kind of like lost without his buddy,
kind of like.
And I just think it's really hateful of Boba Fett to be like, I'm going to get a new Rancor and not bring that dude back in. Be like, I need a good Rancor keeper.
And we're getting the Boba impersonation. That'll be part of our standards from now on.
I'm going to go take a nap. Run my back to bath for me.
All right. Well,
I'm ready for a flashback now.
Flashback this.
No more flashbacks, please. This has been our mini marathon compared to Steve's usual marathons on his show, without advertisements or fake or real. So thanks everybody for being a part of Chapter 282. Thanks as always to Alfie and Brent for being here along the way. D-Doc, hopefully you're having fun in New York City. And Steve,
Yes, sir.
dude, I bug you all the time. I love having you on here. You always make me laugh, and I appreciate you taking the time to come on and be a part.
Oh man, I enjoyed it. Thank you guys for having me. I really appreciate it.
No worries. And you know what? I'm going to end it just the way Steve likes it. Until next time, may the force be with you.
I forgot about that.